Hey everyone, it's Allie, and today we have some pretty important Last Epoch news that's going to concern the future of the game as a whole. So yesterday, 11th Hour released their roadmap on all the content that we can expect, starting with the first season of Last Epoch all the way through the fourth season. Now, this roadmap is not going to be a full picture of everything that's going to come, as they don't want to overpromise and underdeliver, but these are just going to be some of the core features, which they have a lot more planned of, that we're going to be able to expect for each season. Now, in my opinion, I personally really like that they did a roadmap. We had quite a bit of a chat about this in my Twitch chat yesterday when this was first announced, and I think the general consensus is that roadmaps are typically pretty nice to have, as you know what to look forward to and it gets you hyped for the future of the game rather than hoping that a upcoming season is going to be something that you might be interested in. So with all this, I will say that the future of Last Epoch is looking unbelievably bright. I'm very happy with at least all the planned content that they're looking to release over the next few months, and I thought we should make a video that quickly goes over all the main points of each season and what my thoughts are going to be on it. So first off, starting with season 1, we are going to get ourselves a new Pinnacle boss, which we knew about from a few months ago, as this was that was actually talked about and spoiled in the global chat of the game, which is actually really nice, as it gave us something to look forward to for season 1, as well as us getting Harbingers, which, looking at the concept art for season 1, I'm assuming they're going to be some sort of mini boss that you might have to fight before you get to fight the Pinnacle boss itself, or they might be some sort of encounters you might cross in your monoliths, such as maybe a unique echo that you get to do a mini boss, kind of like how you can fight Orbis throughout your echoes. On top of that, we're also going to get random encounters called Nemesis, which it's kind of hard to speculate on what these are going to be. If you want my assumption of what it's going to be, it's probably going to be some sort of mini boss that appears in your echoes that you get to fight for some sort of new loot or some sort of new items that are not obtainable anywhere else. Should be pretty fun. Adding more content to echoes is always great, as that's honestly been the general concern a lot of people have had. There's just not enough things to do in echoes and they get kind of stale very quickly, as the maps themselves are not randomly generated, meaning that you kind of get used to the same layouts very often, and the only real special thing outside of the echo objective is simply just to go and fight any exiled mages you might see. So them adding additional new content for us to do in echoes is going to be great to break up all the monotony of doing echoes that some people might experience. And finally, the biggest talking point here is going to be that we're getting a dodge roll add into the game. Now, this was not on my bingo list of something they add to the game this early on, but honestly, it really makes sense. I like that they're adding a dodge roll, as from D4 and all the experience I've had in that game, it actually feels really good to have one. And it's honestly a really good addition to RPGs. And I feel like the industry as a whole moving towards dodge rolls, with PoE 2 getting a dodge roll and potentially PoE 1 getting the WAS move in the future, is honestly a really, really good thing. In this game, for example, Sentinel really struggles with mobility, and having a dodge roll, especially if you can animation cancel, so you basically have an on-demand movement skill, is going to really feel good for boss fights. And I'm assuming that they probably were testing the Pinnacle boss and they felt like they were probably gimping themselves in terms of what they could do with abilities if they can't give all classes some sort of baseline dodge ability or some sort of baseline mobility skill to use to deal with mechanics. So I think just in general, this is going to feel great for a lot of things. And then I think if they are adding this in to give themselves more design space to make more interesting boss fights and more interesting content in general, I am all up for it. It felt great in D4. I think it'll feel just as good in this season as well. Next, we have the third season of Last Epoch 1.2. Now, this is going to finally give us a story expansion to the game. If you follow through with the lore of the story, it is currently unfinished, and it finishes in Majelka when you fight the snake boss, and then you just get teleported to the end of time and you're basically just told it'll continue in the future. So with this, we'll be exploring the ancient era of the game, which is something we haven't really touched much so far. We've only been briefly inside of it for a few areas, and they're mostly side quests that you had to do. You never really had to progress through it outside of a tiny little bit at the start of the story. So it'll be interesting to see what that has to offer. At the same time, we're going to get a new event called Primal Hunts. I don't really know what these are going to be. The only inspiration here I can give is bestiary from Path of Exile, where you have someone that accompanies you through your maps and you go and capture beasts and then you do things with the beasts. I assume it's going to be some sort of same mechanic where you're fighting some sort of ancient era beast throughout your echo, or maybe it's a whole separate side thing where you're going through different ancient era periods and you're hunting down monsters, kind of like Monster Hunter, where you're specifically trying to take down a massive beast that you chase down throughout the zone and have to consistently fight. We'll see what that brings us, but no matter what, this is also going to add in Primordial Uniques. Now, I don't really know what these are going to be. The only inspiration that we have to base these off of are going to be the Weaver items, which are a subset of unique items that have their own separate properties. For example, all normal items, you can put LP on them. While with the Weaver items, they cannot gain any sort of LP and they don't have any. And instead, the item improves itself and gives itself LP stats as you equip it and as you fight things with it. I'm going to assume the Primordial Uniques are probably going to be the same thing, where it's a subset of uniques. They're going to have their own special thing that they do. Potentially, they could be uniques that randomly have mods on them, kind of like a Watcher's Eye from Path of Exile, where it's a massive pool of mods, and every time you get the item, it rolls with a random amount of mods on them, or it could potentially be something that you can combine together with another unique that you have, getting half of the effects of the primal item, half the effects of a unique item, and potentially making some really cool items that way. Or it could just be something completely different that gives us new stats that are just not obtainable anywhere else. We'll have to see what they do with Primordial Uniques, but Weaver items were pretty unique on their own, and well, they've gone from not really being that popular to being pretty meta items in a lot of builds. So I assume that the Primordial items are going to be the same. They're most likely going to be pretty meta items in quite a lot of builds. For the 4th season of the game, we are most likely going to have some sort of Weaver expansion. The artwork for it is of a spider spinning webs around things, and well, the only thing that we know that is spider-like is Weaver, as if you look at the icons for all Weaver items, they have a little bit of a web icon around them. If we look at all the things that are going to come with it, we are going to be getting ourselves new procedural side zones, which if they wanted to fit it in lore-wise, it could be something along the lines of Weaver made a bunch of zones and you're just going through them and seeing what they're looking like. Or it could potentially be some sort of thing where Weaver is constantly spinning a zone that you're walking through as it's being made in front of you. We'll have to see where that goes, but it's most likely going to be something Weaver related, as we don't really know of any other spider characters in the story. Not only that, but we're going to be getting ourselves a big Monolith of Fate expansion. This might mean new echoes for us to do that give us different buffs. For example, how we have the beacon echo that gives us a lot of sight around it to see what's there, or all of the echo nodes that allow us to reset the web or completely reroll all the things on it. I can expect we're going to get more things akin to that, where we're just going to get new nodes to play around with that might change things, or we might get a whole new system added on top of echoes that might fundamentally completely change everything. We'll see where they go with this. There's a lot of places they can go with this. They can add in, for example, Uber Orbis. They can add in other mini bosses throughout the echo web to fight, and they could add a myriad of interesting new effects that could potentially affect regions of the echo, giving you specific buffs or debuffs if you attempt to do portions of that echo. And finally, the last key point for the 4th season is going to be unique false echoes, which I'm not really sure what that means. Does this mean that they're going to be false uniques, or does this mean that they are unique in the sense that the false echoes are something special, so when you encounter one, it's something noteworthy and you want to do it? We'll see where they go with that. We'll see what a false echo actually means. Is it actually real, or how exactly is that tied into the gameplay? But no matter what, we'll be getting a pretty massive addition into the endgame of the game through the 4th season. And then finally, out of all the content that we're going to know about for the 5th season of the game, we are going to be getting ourselves a pretty big rework into how all of your skills work. We're going to be getting ourselves skill sigils, which from the artwork, we can see that it's either going to completely change what nodes are going to be available for your tree, or it's going to just flat out give you additional nodes. The other thing to mention about the artwork is that 2 of these paths are like supercharged with lightning, meaning they potentially are even better. So this might be something you can upgrade. But my take on what the system is going to be is a system where you're going to get some sort of consumable or some sort of token that you can use on a skill tree, possibly just completely re-roll it and give you either new modifiers out of a pool that makes sense for the skill, or allow you to steal nodes from other skills, which might be kind of interesting. This could also be just some sort of new stat stick that you could put into your skill that allows you to, for example, maybe socket a gem into your skill that is upgradable, that gives you additional stats for that skill. There's a lot of ways they can go about this, but it's definitely going to be some sort of customization to your skills in general. It's going to allow you to probably expand quite massively on what skills can possibly do. And if that is not interesting to you enough, we are also going to be getting ourselves new endgame bosses in season 5, which is going to be great. We always like more content to do. We always like more bosses. And from what they've been alluding to in terms of what the Pinnacle boss is going to be like, as they are running a poll along with this roadmap on how the community wants Pinnacle bosses to roll out in terms of availability when they are released, I think the new bosses they're going to be adding into the game are going to be relatively difficult, and I think they're going to be quite a big challenge. This could also potentially mean new dungeons. Now, they didn't specifically say dungeons here, but when I think of bosses, a new dungeon would be a great place for them to add additional bosses, and this could potentially be some sort of dungeon expansion where instead of just having the one main boss at the end of a dungeon, there's now either multiple bosses or there's some sort of mini boss that you have to fight before you get to fight the main boss, which also might offer loot itself. It's quite a lot of places they can add new bosses, so it'll be interesting to see what they do. Another thing they could do is simply just add new echo regions entirely with completely new mini bosses and a completely new subset of loot. And finally, and this is my opinion, probably the single biggest change they could make for the game, they are adding in a Transmog Dyes system into the game. This is not my bingo list of things that they would add to Last Epoch, but my God, that is going to be a really, really big win for the game. Now, I can expect this to be some sort of a premium aspect to it. They, at the end of the day, need to make money as a company, and the only way they make money is off of MTX sales. So I can expect, for example, some dyes to most likely be premium. Most games that do have a dye system built into the game as well also have premium dyes that you have to purchase with money. So I can expect there to be a little bit of that, but I expect the rest of the system to be completely free. I'm going to assume this is probably going to be something like World of Warcraft's Transmog system, where you can just go in and use any appearances that you have unlocked to change the appearances of any of your current gear to look like it, meaning that you should be able to customize a character and make it look pretty much however you want with all the in-game assets that we have available. This is a really big win for the game, as people really like fashion, and if they implement this transmog system into the game well, this could be a massive win for the game, as if we look at World of Warcraft, for example, a lot of people love doing old content, all the way from the super hardcore players all the way to the casual players, just to farm transmogs to be able to make new fashion sets. Fashion massively sells, and people just love fashion as it's something to do outside of just your endgame grinding goals. You can, for example, have a goal in a given season to go grind a specific transmog, and what they could possibly do is add cosmetics onto the bosses with a low drop rate, giving you an incentive to not only go and interact with the rest of the contents available in the game, but it might give you secondary goals if you don't really necessarily want to progress your character, where you can just go farm a dungeon, for example, for a specific transmog if you want to make a pretty set. And do the same thing for dyes, where they can tie dyes to either endgame bosses or achievements or difficult things to accomplish to give people other goals to aim for. As long as they don't massively fumble this system, and in my opinion, it's probably very difficult to fumble the system, this should be a massive win for the game, and in my opinion, it's the single most exciting feature out of everything here outside of the new bosses, as this, if done well, is going to be really good for the game overall. No matter what, I think the future of Last Epoch is looking unbelievably bright, and I think we're going to have a really good time over the next year playing this game. Now, this list is not going to be everything that's going to be added into the future with these seasons. This is simply just a taste of some of the big talking points, but the devs have said that there will be more coming with these seasons, as well as balance patches, community feedback, and any sort of other improvements that make sense to add to the game. And we will have more features added into every season. They just don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. It's better to underpromise and overdeliver, in my opinion, as that's going to make people feel a lot better. The biggest concern people have had for this game was the lack of endgame content, and well, the devs wanted to make sure that they made the base game as good as possible, because if the base game is good, they can just sit here and do exactly what they're planning to do, of just adding endgame content after endgame content after endgame content to make the game feel rich and full and fulfilling, to just play it basically for months and months without getting bored. With all that said, if you have any questions on anything here, if you want to discuss it further, feel free to leave a comment in the comments below, and I'll be more than happy to discuss any of this with you further. With that said, I'm excited to play Season 2, and hopefully we should get some information on when Season 2 launches in maybe a few weeks at most. And I can't wait to explore all the new things and test out the new boss and have fun with all the new content that's available with all of you kitties, both here on YouTube and on Twitch. If you want to watch me play Last Epoch when Season 2 launches, I am streaming on Twitch every single day, so feel free to come by and hang out with all the kitties and be a part of a community. With that said, I hope you kitties have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you all in the next video.